So let's just review from last week. We got through the shar, the gateway into the book, the title page, and that's where the author defines what the book's about. And he tells us it's a collection of teachings, the Likutei Amorim. That's what he wanted the book called. And there's two parts to it. And this is the first part, which is the book of the Beinoni. So a collection because everything he grounds, everything on tradition. Always finds that I didn't say anything new. It's there, you can look back and see. Of course, when he puts the pieces together, it comes out something very new. And he puts a different light on it, but everything's grounded. And it's the book of the Beinoni. It's not a book for tzaddikim, for ascetics, for most enlightened souls. No, it's a book for the everyman. And that's the period that it's written in, like I mentioned last week, it's written at the time of the French Revolution. So rise of populism, the everyman. So that's who it's for. And he mentioned who it's from, didn't say their names, but we said there's the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, his teacher. And put a list in here of the Sfarim, the books that he relies on the most. And the whole thing is based on, and everything in the Tanya is about how Kikarev Elecha, that this is very close to you, very accessible to you. It's part of you, it's who you are, in your mouth and in your heart to do it. So keep the Torah with all your heart, to be able to do mitzvahs, thank you so much, with love and joy, not just because I have to do it. So the Tanya is a book about serving God with love and joy, with the heart, and not just with your hands and feet and mouth. And he's going to explain how it's very accessible with a path that is long and short. I forgot to admit those people. Yes, with a path that is long and short. So explain the path that's long and short, right? That you can have with a story of the boy, the shepherd boy, and so on. So basically you have a path that's quick and gets you there, but you don't get inside. The path that gets you inside is a long path. So there's a path that goes straight to the heart, and you're all excited, and maybe you really are excited, but you didn't get inside yourself, and there's no real change. And for transformation takes the longer path, which is through the mind. You get to the heart through the mind, which is the path what he calls Chabad. Okay, so that was the introduction of the path. So now we start chapter 1. Just go straight to page 17. Here's a teaching from the end of the 3rd chapter of Nida. It's a Sechta of the Talmud. It says, before you were born, the heavenly court made you swear, be a tzaddik and don't be a rasha. So I didn't translate those terms. Purposely, I didn't translate those terms, but I put them on page 12, explained what these terms are. And mostly I explained that we'll find out what they are as we go along. So a tzaddik, usually you describe a person, oh, he's such a tzaddik. He lives a very moral life. But we're going to find out that doesn't work. And a rasha means somebody who's the opposite of tzaddik. He's not a moral person. But we're going to find out that doesn't work either. And the Beinoni, that's a regular guy. We're going to find out that doesn't work either. We're going to find out what they are. Okay, so but you were given an oath, be a tzaddik and don't be a rasha. And get this, they also made you swear, even if the whole world tells you, oh, you're such a tzaddik, be in your eyes like a rasha. So anybody remember getting this oath? You recall this? No?
We haven't got it.
Yeah, I know. You did. You don't remember?
What's the question?
Do you remember getting this oath? This swearing
Before you were born.
before you don't remember?
I remember being very small when I was born.
The only one there was my mother. The only one who cared to come was my mother. So, yeah, so you don't remember that you're taking this oath. I mean, what's the point of an oath? You don't remember. So of course you do. Because you're always asking yourself, am I good enough yet? Why? Because you have this oath before you were born. I'm supposed to be a tzaddik. Am I a tzaddik yet? I'm not supposed to be a Russian. And no matter what, no matter how good I do, even the whole world says, which means usually the whole world to most people means I say. That's how I feel about myself. I'm not, no. You're still not good enough. So it's, even if you don't consider it a memory, it's something very deeply ingrained in us. As soon as you introduce the notion of morality into human life, which is just endemic to the human situation. You have a tribe of people, a culture, whatever, there's always going to be morals. That's how societies work. So as soon as there's morality, immediately everybody's always going to feel, I'm not good enough. Because morals are ideals, and people are not perfect. So it's like trying to make a perfectly square piece of meat. It's never going to, the piece of meat is never going to be perfectly square. So how is, if these ideals are perfectly square, this is the ideal. You're supposed to be a triangle or a circle. You can't do that. So it's always going to be this thing. So this very much sums up the human situation when it comes to morality. I'm supposed to be a tzaddik, not to be a Rasha. And no matter how good I am, it's not good enough. Okay, but it seems contradictory. It seems to contradict, conflict with, we learned in Pirkei Avot, that you're not supposed to consider yourself a Rasha. Never say, look, I'm bad, that's it. And it seems counterproductive. You're going to be very good, you're trying your best, and so on, but no matter how good I am, I'm not good enough, I'm a Russian. So then what's the problem with that? He says you become discouraged and depressed, and you won't be able to serve God with joy and enthusiasm. Tuv leva, with a good heart. So that's the first thing you learn in Tanya, is that you have to serve Hashem, you have to serve God with joy. And you're not allowed to be depressed. You're not allowed. And so you're not allowed to consider yourself to be bad. You're not allowed. I get that straight. You're not allowed to consider yourself to be bad, because then you won't be happy, and you have to be happy because you have to serve Hashem with joy. And also a person's going to say, okay, so I'm going to accept the fact that I'm bad, and I'm not going to be depressed about it. Because that's even worse. That's even worse. If you're not upset about the fact that you're bad, then you just don't care. So that's even worse. You can't have that. So what are you going to do? On the one hand, it says, consider yourself to be wicked. On the other hand, that's a really, really bad strategy. Aside from the fact that the Mishnah says you're not allowed. You're not supposed to do that. So we got a contradiction over here. So basically, the real question underlying all of this is, how are you supposed to consider yourself? That's an important question, right? You're going to go about life, like, what is my self-concept supposed to be all the time? Is my self-concept supposed to be, I'm not good enough? Or is my self-concept supposed to be, yeah, I'm good? Which one is it? And it would seem that it's both from here. It's only an apparent contradiction. But it would seem from here so far that neither one of those, if you take either one route, it's not going to be good. You have to have both in some way. How can you have both? The question is, how can you have both? Okay, so far we're assuming that there's a tzaddik at this end, and a rush at this end, and a Beinoni in between, which makes one long line. So you're two poles, and you're somewhere in the middle, and so on. But it's basically two poles. But he says now, when we look and we find into it, we find in the Talmud not two, but a total of 5 categories of people. These are categories that are more like archetypes of people. So what are they? There's a tzaddik v'tevel, a tzaddik for whom things are good. That's not, the Gemara basically saying like this. When you read what the Torah says, you would assume, if you were just born, and you would assume that anybody who's good is having a great life, and anybody who's bad is having a lousy life if they're still alive. Right? That's what you would assume from reading the Torah. But it's not that way. They say we find that there's a tzaddik who's having a good life, and a tzaddik is having a bad life. There's a Rosh who's having a good life, and there's a Rosh who's having a bad life. And there's a Beinoni, there's an in-between person. That's mentioned elsewhere, not there. But the Gemara explains like this. It says, why is this tzaddik? He's a tzaddik, he's a complete tzaddik. Tzaddik for things are bad, he's an incomplete tzaddik. So what's a tzaddik for whom things are good? A complete tzaddik. That's what they mean. And there's an incomplete tzaddik. So what are those? What does it mean, a complete tzaddik and an incomplete tzaddik? Okay. What would you assume it would mean to say that he's a complete tzaddik and an incomplete tzaddik? Scott, what would you assume? Just from
a complete tzaddik, he doesn't sin.
That's what you would think. And an incomplete one?
He's got some.
Yeah, when nobody's looking, once in a while, yeah. That's what you would assume.
He has the temptation.
Oh yeah, maybe you just say has the temptation. Right? You could think that. Yeah. So in the Zohar, it means that we're going deeper into it. It's not a separate theology. It's just the inner soul of this, what's going on. So there it explains like this. The words are, when you say tzaddik for whom things are good, you can read it differently. Tzaddik v'tov lo. You can read it as a tzaddik and good is his. And tzaddik v'ra lo. Tzaddik when things are bad means the bad is his. So it explains like this. Tzaddik, there's a tzaddik who contains some bad, but subdued to the good that dominates within. And there's a tzaddik who's just all good, right? There's no bad there. So you have a tzaddik who's tzaddik b'tov lo, a complete tzaddik, means that he has no bad whatsoever. And a tzaddik ralo, an incomplete tzaddik, is the one who has bad in him, but it's subdued to the good. And the Rasha, good is his. There's a Rasha who has some good in him, but that good in him is subdued to the bad. And so it's bad that, and then there's complete Rasha, who there's no good in him at all. Okay, now hearing that, what would you imagine the incomplete tzaddik to be like? Does he ever mess up?
Someone who has an incomplete faith, or who does sin sometimes. Well, actually,
it says he has bad in it, but it's subdued to the good in it.
Subdued.
Yeah. So subdued to the good means it never gets out of the cage.
So he's actually having to work at keeping it subdued to the good.
So you would think at this point that it's a person who doesn't behaviorally actually do anything wrong, but there's something there itching him, right? That's what you would assume now. Okay? Right now, at this point, but we're going to have everything knocked down over here. Also, elsewhere in the Talmud, in Barachot, right? Says these three general categories. It's tzaddik, rosh, and beinoni. It says like this. It talks about what's going on inside. Tzaddikim yetzer tov shoftan. You have a shofet. In in Hebrew, a judge is not just somebody who decides whether you go to jail or not, but how much you pay and so on. A judge is also somebody who gives counsel. Or, you would come to him and you say, I could do like this and I could do like this. Which way should I go? So he adjudicates the case for you. Which way should you go? That's called a shofet as well. So this was like impossible to translate. I worked all sorts of different. How do I translate this? You can't say it judges them. No, it doesn't judge you. It's your judge. So it's in tzaddikim, their good impulse is the judge who determines their moral decisions. Good evening. Have a chair, please. So, and one of these. So, we're on page 19. So, he's got a struggle inside him. He's got a good impulse. He's got one impulse to go this way, another impulse to go that way. Who determines which way things go? But tzaddik, it's always his Yetzer Tov. Yetzer Tov decides I'm going this way. Rashaim, Yetzer Hara, it's a Rasha. It's a bad impulse that always determines which way he's going to go. And in Beinanim, the middle guy, both judges determine their moral decisions. So what's happening in the Beinani? He could go this way and he could go that way. And he's hearing both sides. Okay, now go back to this incomplete tzaddik. We said before, maybe the incomplete tzaddik is somebody who's got a struggle inside him. Does that work now? It wouldn't work because that would be the Beinani. So it must be that the incomplete tzaddik doesn't have a struggle going on inside him. So what's incomplete about him? Well, the bad is subdued to the good. Well, what's the difference between bad being subdued to the good if it's not bothering you anymore, and somebody who there's no bad in there at all? So it's getting very difficult to discern between these different cases. And okay, so it says which way they are, and Beinani, you would think now, however, that the Beinani is the guy he's going back and forth, sometimes like this, sometimes like that, sometimes he listens to Yetzer Hara, sometimes he listens to Yetzer Tov. So now he throws a wrench in the works. Amar Rabba. Rabba was the teacher who was teaching all of this, and he was the great tzaddik of that time. And he says, for example, I am a Beinani. Hold on. Abaye, his student, it's on the next page, on page 20 already, responded, Master, if you are a Beinani, what's with the rest of us? Your standards are too high for any creature to live by. So, okay. So what's with this Beinani now? If a Rabbi can consider himself a Beinani, what is this Beinani? So he says we need a good understanding of this with our explanation. Along with the above, okay, he's throwing another problem in here. Says, so the Talmud is discussing in Baba Bas, the Talmud is discussing Job, right? And what is exactly that Job is arguing about with God? And it says, well, his argument was like this. He said to God, listen, God, you're the one who created this world, and you created tzaddikim, and you created Rishaim. Made good people and you made bad people. That's what the Talmud explains. And the Talmud never says about Job that, and he was wrong. That was completely wrong. It doesn't say that. It seems to accept that there is such a thing as created good people and bad people. But elsewhere, the Talmud says that, when you got that oath, before you were born, they also took you before, the angels took you just before you got born. Maybe you might remember this. They took you before God and said, so this little guy, is he going to be smart? Is he going to be dull? He's going to be tall? He's going to be short, handsome, ugly, wealthy, poor, healthy, unhealthy? The one thing they never asked is he going to be good or bad? because everything is in the hands of heaven except for fear of heaven. That's up to you. So it's an axiom of the Talmud that good or bad, that's up to you. But here, we're also saying that God created some people to be tzaddikim, some people to be rishaim. What's going on? So we got a lot of contradictions. So don't worry, we'll settle these contradictions. Everything will get settled. As we'll start settling it by chapter 13. We'll get there in a year or two. Okay, no, but before then, I'll throw, at the end of when you get to this, I'll throw in what's happening here, but we got to get through this first. Okay, so what is this Beinani? That's the question. We're seeking the Beinani now. What's this level called a Beinani? So commonly, a Beinani is understood as a person with half merits and half sins. Some of the times he's doing right, not necessarily half, but he's good, but not always good. And that's the middle guy. That's what it's used to do. It's kind of so a middle point between the tzaddik verses. Can't be correct, he says. Because if it were that simple to distinguish, how could a person such as Rabbah possibly mistake himself for a Beinani? I'll tell you the story about Rabbah. Rabbah was in Pumbedisa, which was the Jewish settlement in current-day Iraq, where all the Jews were living at the time. Most of the Jews were living at the time because it was too dangerous to live in the Roman Empire, and so there were Jews in Rome, but most of the Jews were in Pavel there. And he had the most, his academy was the most prestigious academy where everybody wanted to come to study. On the other, he was also very wealthy, and somebody slandered him. At the time, it was the Persians in control. Somebody slandered him to the Shah. So he had to run for his life. But as he's running for his life, he's always learning Torah because his mouth never stops saying words of Torah. It's hard to imagine somebody whose mouth never stops saying words of Torah. But I personally saw such people, so I know Rabbi Hadakov, the Rebbe's personal secretary, you could see him walking down wherever he was walking, his lips were moving. He was reciting over either Mishnah or something all the time. So Rabbah never stopped saying words of Torah, even when he was running away. So he got to, so he was running, he was a fugitive, and he finally was hiding somewhere in some swamp or sitting on a tree stump somewhere, and of course reciting words of Torah while he's at it. Now, in the meantime, as the Persian authorities are after him, the heavenly court is also after him. Why? Okay, so get this. There was a big debate in the heavens, and the whole heavenly court had made a certain decision on a certain case, and God disagreed. And they were arguing. And God said like this, and the heavenly court says like that. And there's an argument going on. So who's going to settle the argument? This is only in the Talmud, only Jews. So he said, well, the expert on this matter is Rabbah. So let's go get Rabbah. Well, he can't adjudicate over here because he's alive in that world. Well, we'll bring him here. Well, once he's come here, he's part of the heavenly court. He'll just agree with all of us. Okay, so just as he's dying, he'll say, okay. So they send the angel of death, go get Rabbah. So there's Rabbah running from the Persian authorities and running from the angel of death. And he's sitting there in the swamp and reciting words of Torah. And then the angel of death wants to take him, but the angel of death can't, because you can't interrupt somebody who's learning Torah, of course. So angel of death is like waiting for something to happen. And then there's the wind blowing through the trees, and Rabbah thinks, oh, they're coming after me from that direction now. And he stopped for one moment, angel of death gone. And at that moment, he was just saving over some other Mishnah, and he said, Tahor, it's pure, it's good. And that was the decision above. But apparently God still disagreed. But anyways, the point is, could you imagine such a person being half sins? Why does he have time to sin? The angel of death can't even find an opening. There's no opportunity for him to sin. Aside from the fact that Abai said, like, if you were a Beinani, what are we? So hold on. But he said that he's a Beinani. He's just being humble. I really know I'm a tzaddik, but I'm not going to say that because, I have to be humble. No, he's not that kind of, you can't say something that's not true. So the only way you could figure this out is if you say that there is no measurable, apparent, behavioral, in other words, distinction between a Beinoni and a tzaddik. Now that's key. That means that these different categories that the Talmud is talking about, tzaddik, Beinoni, rasha, are not behavioral. They're about something that cannot be observed. Now that opens up a whole new world to us, because these terms are, like good, bad, tzaddik, rasha, those are fundamental to all of Torah. As soon as you come along and redefine the fundamental terms of any subject, that means you have to re-examine the entire subject. Like if I come along and tell a physicist, the matter isn't what you think it is, and energy is what you think it is, that means I've just turned all over the whole of physics, right? You're talking about fundamentals. There are very few people in any field that deal with the fundamentals of the field. Like everybody's got this sandbox, and we all play in this sandbox. These are the parameters of the sandbox. Once in a while, somebody comes along and says, "No, the goals just got changed, right? We moved the goalposts." It doesn't happen very often. But here, that's what he's doing. He's saying the basic goalposts of what is tzaddik and what is rasha, what is good and what is bad. He's changing it. It's not about behavior. It's about something else. And this is something very peculiar about Tanya, is that in all other books of ethics that I've read, Jewish books, a common word is hanhaga, which means behavior. And in Tanya, the word doesn't appear once. It's not about behavior. What is it about? He has other words, but doesn't use the word behavior. So the distinction is something inner that's going on, and we have to find out what's that inner thing going on. So he says, besides that, how could you have a middle category, half sins and half merits? Okay. As long as a person is committing sins, the Talmud says he's completely a rasha. If he repents afterwards, he's forgiven. He's completely a tzaddik. I'll tell you where it says this. Where does it say in the Talmud that as soon as a person repents, he's a tzaddik? Or if he's being bad, it says like this. It's talking about the laws of marriage. Guy is underneath the chuppah. Rabbi says, okay, it's time to give her the ring, right? So he gives her the ring. When you give the lady the ring, you say, you're betrothed to me with this ring. According to Jewish law, right? So he says, you're betrothed to me with this ring, according to Jewish law, on the stipulation that I am a complete tzaddik. Or he might say, on condition that I am completely wicked. Okay, so let's take that second case. He says he's completely wicked, and everybody knows that he's such a tzaddik. Is it a marriage or not? Okay, the other way around. Everybody knows, like, he's the gangster guy, right? You don't want to be around him, right? And don't get into his crowd, right? And he says, I'm in stipulation that I'm completely a tzaddik. Is it a marriage? Your judgment?
No.
You would say no.
Sure.
No, seems no.
Right.
So Talmud says it might be. And he has to, just in case, he has to give her a bill of divorce. Why? Because he said that he's a really bad guy. He says he's a tzaddik. Maybe he felt some tshuva in his heart at that point and he thought, I really would like to be a tzaddik. I don't like my life. Bang, he's a tzaddik. Or he could have been under the chuppah, and at that point he said, I'm stipulation that I'm wicked. Maybe at that point he was thinking, he's going to go off and buy a little Hindu thing and make offerings to it. I just had the thought that maybe they're right, He's a Russian. Thought of a Avodah Zarah makes him a Russian. What a bad thought about another Jew, God forbid. Not that bad, but. So a person just on the spot, just like that, can turn around his entire, just with one thought. So if so, you can't, how do you have this person who is half this and half that? As soon as he has even one thought, he's a Russian. So you can't say, well, I've only got one sin, so I'm a Beinoni. One sin? Sorry, you're a Russian. So maybe he doesn't do serious sins. Maybe he does only things like, he only does things that are forbidden by rabbinic decree or something like that. No, he says from Yevomis and neither that a person even does something against that the rabbi said is forbidden. He's a Rasha. Not only that, if you see somebody else doing something wrong, and you are able to protest and tell them, no, don't do that, right? And you don't. So you're considered a partner in the crime, because you didn't do anything about it. So that's also a Russian. So that's how far it goes. So the Beinoni never even gets in a situation where he's a partner in crime. If he tries to see somebody who's not keeping Shabbos, he goes over to him and says, I'd love to invite you over for Shabbos, find out how beautiful Shabbos is. He does something about it. See somebody who comes to shul and doesn't put on tefillin, puts tefillin on him, right? But if he doesn't do that, he's a Russian. So if so, he says, all the more so that he has an opportunity to be learning Torah, and he decides, I want to watch Netflix instead. Let's do something else. He's not learning Torah when he could be learning Torah, because the mitzvah of Talmud Torah is a constant mitzvah. You're really supposed to be learning Torah all the time. It's just you're allowed a break in order to eat, sleep, earn the money to eat and sleep, relax a little bit so that you can learn more Torah. But at any point of that, you have no excuse. You're supposed to learn Torah. So a Beinoni then is somebody who every opportunity to learn Torah, he learns Torah. So that's how he learns it, okay? So it must be, you have to conclude that a Beinoni has no sins. Not even the sin of neglecting Torah study. And no, now it makes sense. Rabbi says, I never neglect Torah study. I'm learning all the time. I'm doing everything right. So I'm not a Russian. I'm a Beinoni. That's his point. Now, what does that make the rest of us? Don't say. Don't say. So I want to make something clear there. Like I said before, that these categories, which are Tzaddik, Rasha, Beinoni, think of them as archetypes. And think of them as what am I capable of? Instead of thinking of them as what am I going to be judged as, or what I'm supposed to be trying to be, think of it, what am I capable of? The Beinoni is what all of us are capable of. That's what it means here.
The tzaddik is not what
Tzaddik is not something we're all capable of. That's how he's going to explain the statement of Job, who said, you created tzaddik and greater shine. In other words, you created people who are capable of being a tzaddik, choosing that to be tzaddik. Same guy might choose not to be a tzaddik, but he could be if he wants to be a tzaddik. You created other people that it's not really in their capacity. But it's in the capacity to not be a Rasha, to not be wicked, which is what a Beinoni is. A Beinoni is a person who is not being wicked. He's not listening to that impulse inside him to do those things. So when you were given that oath, don't be wicked, means be a Beinoni. And be a tzaddik, you have to deal with it. What does that mean if you're not capable of it? Later we'll find that it means you can do a little bit of that too. And you can strive towards that, but don't expect it of yourself. Okay, so all this back and forth, which a lot of people get annoyed with. I enjoy it, but a lot of people get annoyed with. all of the back and forth has really gotten us into very valuable information. Because we began with this guilt issue of I'm never good enough. So now we find out, well, what's expected of me? It's not expected. What am I capable of? I'm capable of doing all the mitzvahs and never messing up. I'm capable of that. And the Alter Rebbe already told me in the title page that he's going to show me how that's very accessible for me, how that's really possible for me. It's very close to me to do that, to do all of it with excitement, with enthusiasm. He's going to show me how to do that. I just need to know how to do that. But to be a tzaddik, I shouldn't judge myself by those objectives. That will get me depressed. If I'm going to be thinking I'm not a tzaddik, I should be a tzaddik, that'd be very depressing. So don't think about that. Think about, it's in my capacity to do all the mitzvahs with love and joy. That's my goal. That's the goalpost. And know also, as pointed out, that what it's about is not looking at your behavior. Am I doing this? That's not going to get you there. If you're going to be thinking, I have to do this, I can't do this, and thinking about it that way all the time, it's not going to get there. There's too many things to worry about. Instead, it's something that's inside. You have to work with that thing that's inside that's going to get you there. Okay. So in general, though, we talk about the Russia and the tzaddik, like people say he's such a tzaddik, he's a good guy. Once in a while messes up. You say that all the time. You say somebody's wicked, or they're really bad. Say somebody's a Russia, they're really bad. And even when we said over there like I said, the guy under the chuppah, he had one thought, he did shuv and so on. He's completely a tzaddik. I was careful not to say a complete tzaddik because it's a different thing. When you say he's completely a tzaddik, he's not talking about the complete tzaddik we're talking about over here. He's completely a tzaddik because he did tshuva, he regrets his past, but he hasn't done it yet, even done anything good. So it seems that sometimes the words have one meaning and sometimes the words have another meaning, which happens all the time in Torah, right? What the words mean over here is something different than the words over here, sometimes to be on the same page. So it depends. He says, the heavenly court is judging like on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and saying there's the book of Tzaddikim and the book of Rashaim. That's talking about they're counting up, and they only there do they know how to do it. Counting up, how much did he mess up? How much did he do good? Okay, if the balance goes this way, he's the tzaddik. If the balance goes that way, Russia, it's still pretty much in balance. He's a Beinani. Okay, so for those terms, then it means something different. But he says, a few paragraphs down on page 23, when it comes, however, to the true descriptive title and status of the distinct qualities and levels of tzaddikim and Beinani, none of this applies. Rather, the true definitions reflected in the teachings of our rabbis. In tzaddikim, their good impulse is the judge who determines their moral decisions. And now he quotes the rest of what they said. As King David said, my heart is empty within me. What's empty? It was empty because there was no evil impulse within it. He had killed that impulse by fasting, leaving him with only one impulse, the impulse to do good. So the tzaddik is somebody who has no impulse to do bad. And that includes the incomplete tzaddik, which can give us some trouble over here. Like, how do you do that? If neither of them has an impulse to do bad, what's going on? But a tzaddik is a person, he never feels like, he never has an impulse, I would like to do something that's forbidden, even something that's not in God's service. Right? This is going to become very important to know. You shouldn't blame yourself for desiring things that you shouldn't desire. You can't blame yourself for your feelings, for your emotions. That's up to a tzaddik, not a Beinoni. A Beinoni is in a struggle. So that's a tzaddik. But anyone who has not attained this degree of internal transformation, even if he has more merits than sins, has not achieved the status and level of a tzaddik at all. Why at all? Because he's not even a Beinoni. So when the rabbis are not discussing halacha, but they're interpreting biblical verses, they point out the scarcity of tzaddikim. Medrash says, the Holy One, may he be blessed, saw that the tzaddikim are few, so he planted them deliberately in each generation. That's how few of them they are, that he had to make sure there would be fair distribution. As the verse says, God knew who are the pillars of the earth, and he set the world upon them. And not only that, the entire world could endure for the sake of even a single tzaddik. Like it says, a tzaddik is the foundation of the world. So that's how few there are of the real tzaddik. That's how few there are of people who have changed what they desire, made a real transformation in their inner character. And so that's not something that is expected of you. I made some nice charts there. We made nice charts. Go back and see on page 19, the 5 categories. Take a look over there, page 19. At the bottom of the page, so you see there's the tzaddik for whom things are good is a complete tzaddik. There's only good within him from the Zohar. And the good impulse is the judge who determines moral decisions for all post tzaddikim. And the 2 types of Rasha, what's up with them. So for clarity's sake. Okay, so that summarizes what we got so far. And now even though it's still the same chapter, now we start, since we found that what matters is not what your focus is supposed to be, is not behavior, but something going on inside you. So we have to explore what is going on inside you. And we get now, in the next couple of chapters, a description of the psyche of the human being. Now keep in mind that this is in the 1790s, it's the 18th century, right? Nobody had really described, the people who were talking some sort of psychology, but nobody really described the human psyche. And this is over 100 years before Sigmund Freud. So he's going now and really making an analysis of how does the human psyche work. He's going to talk about the relation. What is a soul? How many souls do you have inside you? How many people are there inside you? Are they just different impulses, or are they different people? He's going to talk about what's the relationship between your mind and your heart. How do they influence one another? Is there one dynamic or more than one dynamic? He's going to talk about how your soul expresses itself, how your mind and heart express themselves, and make a distinction between mind and thoughts. It's 2 different things. And mind is one thing and thoughts are another thing. And he's going to talk about the relationship between mind and heart and the words that you speak and the actions that you do. And with this, you will have an entire description of the human being and the struggle between the different people inside you. So that's where we're going to get to. And remember, there was a book a while ago, an Israeli, but it was in English, it's called Yetzer. And the thesis of the book was that all Sigmund Freud had done was take that which every Cheder boy knows about the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara and translate it into High German academic German.
Rabbi, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
So would you say King David was a Sadi?
Yeah. When he killed his Yetzer Hara after the story with Bathsheba.
That was my next question.
Yeah.
So it's a transformation. So you could do bad things and then at some point elevate to the next level. So you could be a Rasha and become a Beinoni or become a Beinoni.
You could mess up and you could mess up bad.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a discussion in the Talmud. The Talmud says there are those who say that King David never sinned. It wasn't a sin, and they explain what was actually going on in another way. But then you have the other opinion, no, it really was a sin.
Yeah.
So, but even if it really was a sin, a person could do children. And if he's given that kind of neshama that can become a tzaddik, he can become a tzaddik. But if he doesn't have that kind of neshama, it's beyond. Because it's something really amazing. We're living organisms. What does it mean to be alive? This is going to help in understanding the second half of the chapter. So let me say it now. What does it mean to be alive? And I'll tell you why the question is important. Because there's two words, besides tzaddik and Rasha, get redefined. There's two even more fundamental words in Tanya that have a very different meaning than they have in general. And that's good and bad. Good and bad in Tanya do not mean the same as good and bad elsewhere, so I'll explain that. To be alive, what do you mean that something's alive? What's the difference between a rock or a piece of dead water and a living organism? To be alive basically means you don't give into your environment, entropy. You persist as your own being. In order to persist as your own being, you have to put up a wall that says, this is me inside here. This is all of them outside there, right? It's a membrane, a skin, bark, something that divides between you and the rest of the world. Next thing you have to do is suck as much energy as you can out of your environment and hold on to it tight inside you. Third thing you have to do is make more of yourself. Make yourself bigger and multiply. Then you're a living organism. To live, in one word, means to be selfish. And that's just survival. As soon as you're not selfish, you become like the soil or the water, just part of the environment. And you surrender to entropy, whatever happens. You want to persist as I am this, you got to be out for yourself. That's first and foremost what's going to be with me or my offspring, which is just an extension of me. That's what life is. That's our world. That's what our world is made of. So yes, there are many beautiful things in our world, and there's a certain harmony. Somehow the system fails to crash over and over again. And like, even though the lions are out to get the zebras, and the zebras are eating the grass, and everybody's out to get energy from each other, right? But somehow it just stays balanced, not all the time, but most of the time. Like, there's certain creatures that can come around and really cause catastrophe, such as human beings. But otherwise, most of the time, it manages. But first and foremost, in everybody's mind on the planet is me. That's what it's about. In Tanya, that's defined as Ra. That's called bad. What are you supposed to do? What's it supposed to be? Well, it's God's world. It's his world. It's not about you. It's about him. You're just part of the story. You're his artwork. What are you doing imagining that this is your world and everything is centered around you? It's not centered around you. It's centered around him. Now, there are other worlds, higher worlds, where all the denizens of that world know that. You know, the angels, you ask them, is this your world? No, it's not nothing about me. I just do whatever he says. You know, Who are you? I'm not a me. I'm not an it. Whatever I'm sent to do, that's what I do, But in this world, it's okay. I'm here. I've got a house. I've got a spouse. I got a car, and I also have a God. I listen to him as well. But it's principally about me. So in Tanya's language, well, that's what we're trying to transcend. And as soon as we know that that's something to transcend, it becomes bad. If transcendence of that is not possible, we're all stuck with just being animals and that's it. So you can't call that bad. But as soon as you're told, well, you can't transcend it, so then it becomes bad and something else becomes good. Where do you see this in the Torah? You see that when God creates the world, each day he creates something, he says, oh, that's good, I like that. Create something else, oh, that's good, I like it. Oh, this is very good. Creates everything, 6 days, everything is tov ma'od. It's all very good. And then, oh, we've got low power mode here, okay. And then comes along, it's not getting energy from it. It's not alive, so it's not sucking energy out of its environment. Okay, so you guys might disappear in any second. It's low power mode, but it's not my fault. Okay, so as soon as Shabbos comes along, something transcendent enters into the world. And so immediate says, Asher bara Elokim la'asot, that God created. La'asot means to repair. So why is it to repair? You said everything's perfectly good. It's very good. Why does it have to be repaired? Because there's something new over here. There's Shabbat. Shabbat transcends time. The world is all about time and space, and Shabbat is beyond that. Now that you introduce something that's beyond it, it needs repair. So the same thing. Inside you is a divine soul. There's a piece of God inside you. We're going to find that out in chapter 2, but I'm doing spoilers over here tonight. So you've got a divine soul. There's something injected into this world that's beyond this world. Okay, now everything is bad. And let me redefine bad then. Bad means it's in for repair. It can be improved. And that's your job. So good means when you find how the thing is supposed to be working and you get it to transcend itself in some way. Oh, that's good. But before you've done anything with this world, the state of it, the default state is not good. Not good. It's in the repair shop, right? You're the repairman. So that's not good. So, okay, so that's going to help us in understanding the two different souls. Do we have time now? What's the time? 8:27. We'll get started on the second part of the chapter now, which starts on page 25. It says, all these questions and concepts can be explained according to something Rabbi Chaim Vital writes in Shara Kedusha. Rabbi Chaim Vital was the protege of Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, the Arizal, lived in Sfat in the mid-16th century, the golden age of Sfat. And his teacher was the Arizal, who taught a whole new level of Kabbalah, very rigorous Kabbalah. And most of it was written down by Rabbi Chaim Vital. So he writes in the Eitz Chaim, which is a book you can kind of over and over again in Tanya. So there he explains that every Jewish person, whether at Tzaddik or Rasha, has two souls. So as I said, not two inclinations or two impulses, but two souls, meaning two different people inside you. As it's written, when a spirit emerges from within me and clothes itself in a body, I have made souls. So any one person is made, there's two souls in there. So these are two nefashis, two entire persons within you. This was always a debate amongst the philosophers. Is a person one person with two different channels, two different poles to them, or is it two different people? And is it that your mind and heart are two completely different people, or is it one person? So here, how he looks at it is that the mind and heart are one person, but there's also a divine soul, which is beyond the mind and the heart, which comes to rest within them, but it's from beyond them. Okay, so the first soul he's going to talk about was the one first entry and first dibs on the body, is of the klippa and the sitra achra. Oh, I got to explain klippa. It's in the glossary back there. Let's go back to how I wrote it in the glossary. So to page 12. It says key words to know for this chapter. Don't start this chapter without reading these key words. Even if your teacher just goes ahead anyways, you got to go back there. So klippa, see there in klippa, literally means shell or husk, right? An orange peel is a klippa. A coconut husk is a klippa. So you got to, want to get to the fruit inside, you got to break open the shell first. So, and some things have really tough shells and some have easy shells, okay? So it's used in Zohar almost interchangeably with the word evil, but evil exists when the divine flow of energy is obstructed and distorted by the klipot, just as a shell obstructs the consumption of a fruit or nut. By discarding the klippa, we reveal the divine light and heal our world. You could also think about the klippa as being that I said when a living organism, his first thing has to do is, this is me and this is the rest of the world. So that sense of distinguishing myself, it's a delusion really, because we're all sharing the same energy. It's one energy going around to everybody. And the energy doesn't distinguish. It's all one thing. But persisting as a living being means I see myself, I delude myself into this notion that I am a distinct being. So it's that klippa, which is really very false. Not a distinct being. You're getting your life from the same sunshine and the same nitrogen and the same everything else as everything else is getting its life. And it's especially so with human beings. It's mind-boggling with human beings. We see ourselves so much as individual human beings. You stop to contemplate this for a little bit, and you see it is such a delusion. No human being ever lives alone. First of all, if you put somebody in solitary confinement, God forbid, the United Nations considers 12 days of solitary confinement to be a form of torture, and because it can cause permanent psychological damage, right? A person is alone for 12 days can be permanently damaged, God forbid. So you can tell me a human being exists on his own? Like he needs somebody to talk to. Besides that, no human being ever thinks alone. If you're thinking, you've got 100 other people's voices in your mind. No human being makes a decision alone. As soon as you sit to decide, you're thinking about all those other voices, all the other people. There's no such thing as the individual human being. Yet we go through life like as though it's just me here. It's never just me. It doesn't work. So this klippa manifests in so many different ways everywhere. So that's called a klippa. Sitra achra simply means the other side. And we'll get to in chapter 6 that there's really only two sides. There's United Nations and Israel. No, there's two sides, right? There's the transcendent side of Kedusha, and there's everything in this world, which is the other side, because it's in for repair, like we said. So two sides. So the first soul in any person that has first dibs on the body, running the body to begin with, everything, because the divine soul takes time to get into the body. This soul is there immediately upon birth. Okay, that's this soul of Klippa and Sitrach. It invests itself in the blood to vitalize the body. For the vital soul of the body is in the blood. That's in the Torah. So this is like metabolism. And from this soul emerges all bad human traits. They arise from the four bad elements. Bad elements. bad elements is fire, air, water, earth. How can they be bad? How can they be bad? But that's what that's explained. Bad here is completely different definition. These next 2 pages of commentary over here. Take them home and read them, because I wrote many different iterations of this, and a lot of it got thrown out, not necessarily by me, by somebody else, but the rabbinical board and so on. Until finally I got something down over here. Sorry guys, it's telling me that we got 5% battery remaining. I'll just leave it for now. But I finally got something down that is simple enough to, but a lot of it is what I told you already. But read it anyways. Read it anyways. And this explains how there could be bad elements and the basic human life, like how people basically live, is called, well, not good, and for repair. So God willing, next week we'll finish this chapter 1 and go on to the beginning of chapter 2. And with that, good night, everybody. I'm talking to people over here. Unless you had some questions, there's 5% battery left. You better ask the questions now.
I've got a
These
question,
people still
Rabbi.
have batteries, I can tell. But yes, sir, go ahead.
Hey, I'll try to make it quick. So on page 23, when it's talking about the quote by King David, my heart is empty within me, and that means that his heart was empty of the evil impulse.
Yeah.
Does that mean if his heart was empty because he removed all the evil, then the good impulse was not in the heart? So the good impulse must be somewhere else. Is that correct?
It's an interesting point, and we'll find it. It's not. We'll find out later. It's not simple.
Okay, because I was wondering if that's what Chabad was. Is maybe that's where the good impulse comes from. Is the element, the different kinds of wisdom and knowledge.
We'll find out that each impulse has headquarters and regional headquarters as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So nothing is simple in a human being.
Gotcha.
Thank you. If we're all simple, I wouldn't believe any of us. So there you go. Yeah, Larry, go ahead.
Yes. This is off the subject, but I just wanted to thank you for your contribution to the JLI flagship courses. I have had the opportunity to study all but 2 of the courses over the past 20 plus years, and your contribution has been amazing, and it's brought me much joy.
Thank you. I think I wrote 2 of the first courses, and then I couldn't handle them anymore. That was one of the first courses JLI I wrote. I ended up in the hospital with a panic attack. This guy's like, how come you didn't put this in? Well, you shouldn't put that in. And then I told him, listen, have some guy write the course and then send him off to Hawaii, please. Okay, thank you very much for coming. We'll see you next week. Try to get more battery for you guys next week. So, thank you.
Bye-bye. Shabbat shalom.
Shalom. How do I turn this off? I go over here. All right, where do I go to turn this off? You guys, you still have battery there. You don't have. How do I? There it is. Yeah.